Hello everyone. Thank you for being here, so numerous today. And I'm very happy to introduce you to, Ruben Badalyan, who doesn't need any presentation, but who also deserves an important and presentation. Ruben, for this last appointment in the frame of the AAA, ARWA Archaeology in Action Lectures on the Caucasus. And we are very happy to host Ruben for this, our last session. And we would like to thank Ruben for accepting to participate in this initiative. Ruben Badalyan is the head at the moment, possibly in the future, we will see what will happen, head of the section of the prehistory of the Institute of Archaeology and Ethnography of the National Academy of Sciences of the Republic of Armenia. Ruben, who is a very, is a very good friend of mine. I'm very proud of it. And then is actually, the name of Ruben Badalyan is inextricably and now almost intrinsically linked to the study and researches on the Kura-Araxes culture in Armenia. And certainly is also one of the most influential scholars and archaeologists working on the Kura-Araxes culture, not only in South Caucasus, but also in the larger area that was involved in the so-called expansion of the Kura-Araxes tradition. Actually, this binomial, Ruben Badalyan and Kura-Araxes culture, started, as far as I remember, as far as I know, since actually the early stages of Ruben's career, when he started as I think I was a master's student or slightly after excavations at Karnut. But this research on the Kura-Araxes, in these studies on the Kura-Araxes, continued slightly later in the frame of the international Armenian-American project at Horon, that was at the time co-directed also with Philip Cole. And that actually of the international collaborations is a characterizing feature, is a pillar, I think, of the researches that were and are still carried out by Ruben Badalyan. I would like to mention, for instance, a very early INTAS project that was co-directed with Christine Châtaignier. These collaborations with Christine Châtaignier, starting from the late 90s, it has to be remarked the enlargement of the field of action of Ruben that brought him to excavate much earlier periods than the Kura-Araxes. At first, the Neolithic settlement of Aratashen, the Neolithic that was still almost unknown at that period in Armenia. At first Aratashen and later Aknashen, in the frame always of the collaboration with the French expedition Caucase. But besides that, or together with that, it's also important to mention the role of Ruben in the frame of the project Harrogate, that was also co-directed with Ada Smith, who is here. So hello, Adam, happy you are here. And that unfolded at first with a systematic survey on the eastern slopes of the Ararat Mountains, and later with the excavations of the settlement of Gegarot that revealed a very rich and important occupation sequence dating to the Kura-Araxes, to the early Bronze Age, and to the late Bronze Age. More recently, Ruben went back to the sources. Ruben went back to Carnut for new excavations on both the Kura-Araxes settlement and also on the newly discovered settlement. But now, and simultaneously, I don't know how it is possible for Ruben to find so much time, but is now also involved in new excavation that continue to be focused on the Kura-Araxes. I would like to mention the settlement of Bosque Blur in the Ararat Plain in collaboration with Bérengère Perellot in the frame of the activities of the Mission Caucase. And the second very recent project is the one that focused on the excavations at Shaumian, nearby Yerevan, that revealed an impressive funerary evidence dating to the Kura-Araxes period, and that I think will also be presented today. So after this short, because Ruben, I'm not mentioning also the long list of publications, I give the floor to Ruben Badalyan to talk, let him talk finally about the Kura-Araxes in Armenia. Thank you, Ruben.
Thank you, Giulio. Thank you, Sabina. I'm really glad, and thanks to you for this possibility, because really this year and during the last couple of years, we have many news and not enough time to share everything with you via articles or conference. So, and in the end of the year, it is, I think, a very good chance to introduce the main results for the, not only for this year, but for the last couple of years. And I will try to show you how is the general situation, how is the general situation with the investigation of Kura-Araxes in Armenia, which main result and main problems we have so far, and how is our perspectives, yeah, what we can to do, what we need to do for the better understanding of Armenian Kura-Araxes and Armenian Kura-Araxes in the context of Kura-Araxes in the whole. So first of all, the very short information about our source. So far on the territory of Armenia, we know more than 220 Kura-Araxes sites. Of course, the status of investigation very different because part of it, it's excavated in big scale size settlements, but in the same time, part of this number, that's just collection of the surface material or occasional finds of the destroyed burials. In any case, 220 sites, that's solid data, I think, and 180 of these sites already have been mapped in GIS software. So we have detailed maps for the most part of the territory of Armenia. Besides, for this number of sites of the settlement, we have 165 radiocarbon dates, of course, from the many sites, but mostly that's excavated in big scale excavated sites like Shengavit, Gegarot, Mokhra, Blur, now Karnut and some other sites. In 2 words, I want to also introduce my understanding of the general situation for Kura-Araxes in Armenia. I think, and it's one of my main points, that Kura-Araxes sequence had a discrete character. And I see during that period 2 main phases. Early, first one, before 2900, that's Kura-Araxes 1, and second one between 2900 2600. The first period, early Kura-Araxes, I think it's represented by a relatively homogenic pottery style, which we can find on the territory of South Caucasus, in the Van Lake territory, in the upper course of Arax River, in the Shida Kartli. But for the second period, after 2900, this relative homogeneity was replaced by a mosaic of local ceramic style. Again, on the territory of Armenia, we have 3, 4, maybe even 5 very, I think that's a result of the detailed typological analysis. We have at least 4 or 5 different pottery groups. Because of the level of our knowledge, I can say
Ruben, sorry for interrupting you. Could you please put the PowerPoint in presentation mode so that it will be possibly?
I am sorry. Yeah, I was sure that it's working. Do you see this, Julia?
No.
No?
Okay.
I think he restarts.
Just a minute. Yeah, Julio?
Perfect. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Sorry for the interruption.
Okay, excuse me. So, again, some problem, just a minute. Okay. So, that's what I tell you before about the number of sites, about C14 dates, about my understanding for the process from homogeneity to heterogeneity on the territory of South Caucasus, I can say. And so it's in short, the schematic list, what we have. Here, I think early period, that's Kura-Araxes group, general group, which is dated between 3500 to 2900. During the 2900, I think something happened here, because after, without any transformation, we have immediately 3 or 4 local groups, like with a very distinguished type of the pottery. Shresh Mokhrablur in Arad Valley, Karnut Shengavit around Mount Aragat, Ayrum Tehut in northeast part of Armenia, and maybe even one group more in the basin of Lake Sevan. And as we can see, all these sites of the second group, according to our previous set of the data, and especially for the absolutely new results, which we have from this year, show the synchronization between these four groups. The upper part introduced radiocarbon dates of Karnut-Shengavi style of pottery. Second one from Voske-Balur belongs to the Shesh Mokhra-Balur. That's the site, new sites Markavit and Hagarti in the basin of Akstev River, and finally 7 lake sites. Each belongs to the different style of the pottery, show that's synchronization. What is one of my main points in this story? So when I check the stratigraphical, typological situations of these sites, I recognize that mostly Kura-Araxes sites has single level settlements mostly, both early Kura-Araxes or late Kura-Araxes. Just relatively small number of the sites, multi-layered, which belongs both for Kura-Araxes 1 and Kura-Araxes 2. So here I see some gap, some short hiatus between two periods of Kura-Araxes, and we'll show you also some example of especially Gerarot settlement, how I see this situation. I haven't explanation, I have to say, for this phenomena. I will just show you results of the fieldwork and our observation for this site. So Gerarot will be one of them case sites for this case, located in Tahkavit Plain, which were under the excavation of the joint Aragats project directed by Adam Smith and me. Karnut in the Shirak Plain in northwest part of Armenia, and finally Shaumian burial in north part of Arad Valley, excavated this year. Or we just start to excavate because it was impossible to finish during this field season. So Gerarot, one of the let's say best investigated Kura-Araxes site in Armenia, thanks to big scale of excavation and thanks to the approach, because now Gerarot have a biggest collection of radiocarbon dates, plus for the very good stratigraphical situation. I told many times, for example, when I was a student, it always was a decision or position that only Arad Valley tells has a stratigraphy. But in fact, even mounts, even sites, settlements on the mount area, on the rocky hills with not let's say thick culture level, in any case shows a very interesting stratigraphy, like first of all in Gerarot. So on the different part of the here in the different part of that, we have absolutely same stratigraphical situation. On the top, on the top of the mount, on the west terrace, and on the west slope of the hill, everywhere we have two horizons of Kura-Araxes with very distinguished pottery collections, and the level of sterile colluvial sandy layer, which divided to Kura-Araxes horizons. According to radiocarbon dates, which I will show you after, this interval, this gap, it's around 40, 50 years long. Besides this stratigraphical situation, besides this, the presence of the sterile level, the layout of the both early and late settlements, in terms of the settlement in general, not correlated with each other. So late settlement has an absolutely different layout, and even the functions of the areas were changed during the transformation of Kura-Araxes 1 and 2. Maybe I show this slide already many times, but believe me, it's one of the best examples of the excavated part of the top of the Geharot. You can see by brown, yeah, let's say brown color, that's the lower level, Kura-Araxes 1, and gray, that's the upper, second Kura-Araxes level. As you can see, some late wall cover early oven or late oven sit on the top of the early wall. And same, it's not only these two examples, but here, same observation, late wall on the top of the early oven, etc. Except that some strange or unusual, not very well-known architectural forms on the west slope of the hill shows the same situation. Here we have a construction which function is still not clear for me. I mean these concentrations walls, where late burial were intrusive. Radiocarbon dates and material show that really early construction belongs for the Kura-Araxes 1, so before 2900, when the burials, according to the material and radiocarbon dates, belongs to the second phase of the Kura-Araxes, so after 2900. Other operation on the same west slope show also the presence of the sterile colluvial level between two horizons. Lower one introduced by the same, let's say, unusual, strange, unknown construction of the unknown function, but upper part belongs to the very traditional, very classical circular dwelling with material in situ. Here also, each horizon consists very diagnostic, very well-known type of the pottery. So for lower level, that's LR Aragat, and for upper one, for the room, I mean, that's Karnut Shengavit, and the same situation firmed by the radiocarbon dates. I look for, again, lower one, the very end of the Kura-Araxes 1, and upper building, upper dwelling belongs to the second period of the Kura-Araxes. So layouts of the settlements, layers of both Kura-Araxes settlements not related each other. As I can see some genetic connections between these two, and it's not the continuation of the early settlement during the late period. That's the present, my impression, that's the present of a new settlement on the territory of a previously abandoned site in case of cargo. And the set of radiocarbon dates show very clear short hiatus, 45, 50 years, but short, it's relatively because it's at least 2 generations happened between the 2 occupations of Gerhard. Other case where we can observe maybe same situation, but a little in other way, and which give us a new problems and open a new questions. That's Garnut site on the east edge of Chirag Valley. You see the hill where Kura-Araxes site occupied lower part of the west slope of this site. Garnut was partly investigated. I started the work here in 1981 and worked here 5-6 years on the upper part of the slope. That's operation 1. And in that time, and now still, I'm sure that it's a single layer. In any case, this operation, that's a single layer settlement, which belongs to the final late phase of the Kura-Araxes. But we, 6-7 years ago, we came back here and continue or start a new phase of investigation, which change our impressions, our understanding of this site. A new operation 2, was established in the lower part of the hill, and immediately not only interesting, but an unusual result. So some of the Kura-Araxes burial were found here, include 1 or 2 burials which belongs to the early stage of Kura-Araxes, Kura-Araxes 1. I mean the burial number 2 here and burial number 8. So here not question about the date, about age of this complex, because that's is an typology of material, very modest, but in any case, very well diagnosed. And radiocarbon date shows that this very modest burial belongs to the early period of the Kura-Araxes, and practically no other evidence for this early time on the territory of the site, except 2 or 3 pottery sherds. This, so for example, which we found during the excavation of operation 2 without any stratigraphical context, just the rest of the site, or most part of the site, both settlement and cemetery, that's without any question, that clearly belongs to the Kura-Araxes too. But here also some interesting, let's say, observations. General impression that all the excavated parts of the settlement in the framework of operation 2 belongs to the one built one horizon. maybe some small differences in the terms of build horizon, which we can see in some cases. I mean the fragments of the wall where we have a level of sterile earth between the lower construction and upper construction. But in any case, all the material that we have so far typologically belongs to the late period of the Kura-Araxes. What is interesting here, this part of the settlement practically sterile, empty. A few material is very fragmentary here. Is total absent of small finds like arrowheads, sickle blades, spindle whorls, or personal ornament. We haven't practically archaeobotanical and very few archaeozoological material. And just in one or two cases, we have in situ just a stationary material like oven in one case, and two kitchen vessels in situ. In all other rooms, as you can see, absolutely empty, just few chairs on the floor, which is big difference, principal, I can say difference, with the situation in other part of the same settlement in Operation 1. Already during my early excavation in 1981, we open here the one terrace or one block of the rectangular stone dwellings, which were full by material in situ, and not only the storage vessels of the different shape and size, not only plenty of the small vessels in the situative context, the famous oven from this operation, but in continuation of this part of the continuation of excavation show that we have a same situation in the part excavated during this year, which is again absolutely different from the pre-operation 2. Here in the fragment of the dwelling, which size maximum, I mean preserved part 3 by 3 meter, were open concentration of the pottery vessels, which includes preliminary for this moment, like 40 vessels. That's and small complete vessels are in situ, and big Kura-Araxes in the corner of the room. Besides stone tools in situ, as you can see around this concentration, and plenty of small finds, which include and arrowheads and sickle blades and even bronze objects, etc. So different situation in different parts of the settlement. Even maybe that's better to say 2 settlements. absolutely different. Plus, we have barriers on the territory of Operation 2. And I can't say what's earlier. It was a territory of cemetery, which after abandonment, it was a territory of settlement, which after abandonment, which occupied by cemetery, or it was a cemetery. I can't say because both materials from the settlement and barriers belong to the same Kura-Araxes second phase and have practically absolutely synchronous radiocarbon dates. Here is not an observation about some stratigraphical position. So we have the barriers in the rooms, but always around, but it's no previous, just previous observation. The tombs of Garnut Operation 2 also show some interesting evidence for and continuity of the Kura-Araxes 1 tradition during the Kura-Araxes 2. But in the same time, some reusing of these barriers in the different during the different phases of Kura-Araxes. Here you can see the classical tomb 6 with a gate, which is let's say continuation of the well-known for the Kura-Araxes period tradition. Yeah, Gerarot, Horon, Keti, that's just the territory of Armenia, Lanjik, and many other burials and cemetery shows the presence of the gate, which was open when the family or stam need to bury a new body. In the case of Garnut, especially for this burial, we have material found inside the chamber with practically the same radiocarbon date. I mean, same for all the territory of Operation 2, but in the same time, reusing of this barrier, because in front of the gate between the pale of the stones was anthropological and archaeological material, typologically similar with the previous one, but its impression that they belongs to the previous body which was buried in this tomb. So reusing of this construction. In a little other version of this reusing, we observe in tomb number 8, where again the gate, the part of the construction, and 4 or 5 bodies were found in this chamber. Radiocarbon dates of the anthropological material show that part of this belongs to the early period of Kura-Araxes, and I have to say that the samples are found from this pale, and others belong to the late second phase, include the fragments, bodies, or fragments of the body on the floor of the chamber. Also, the typological analysis of material, and we have 16 vessels here with the 4 bodies, shows that part of material belongs to the classical Garnut-Shengavid part and the Garnut-Shengavid style, and part of the vessels has a typical analogy in the LR Aragat, between LR Aragat's sites. So in general, site as Karnut shows that here on the same practically territory were early site, so Kura-Araxes one site. We have material, we have a tomb, we have radiocarbon date, but we can't see how the early site transformed to the late. So it's not a continuation. And I think my impression that the early site was destroyed, or in any case, I don't want to say that Kura-Araxes 2 population destroyed Kura-Araxes 1 site. No, I want to say that site already was or abandoned, and Kura-Araxes 2, after some short period, occupies this territory without any genetic connection with the previous occupation. During the history of the settlement, also we can observe some transformation, but we are far now from the final solution because, as you can see, we have enough data to describe site in general, Karnut as such, but we can't say detailed information about the hypothetic lower horizon in operation 2, about the relations between main horizon of operation 2 and tombs found on the same territory, and especially, unfortunately, without any connection between site on the territory of operation 2 and site on the territory of operation 2. We will continue our investigation here in hope to understand the process of development, abandonment, transformation of the site settlement during the just one period of the Kura-Araxes. Same observation, and it's not isolated observation. It's not only case of Gegarot, it's not only case of Karnut. Many other sites show practically the same situation, but believe me, these best examples of this situation. So Mohrablur, the settlement on the territory of Arad Valley, also divided by 2 parts by the sterile level of the Aeolian sand. Same we can observe on the settlement of not Aragat, okay, so excuse me, I forgot the sentence. Yes. And even maybe in the small scale, the same observation in the case of the Shaumian burial. This burial results of the occasional find on the north part of the Arad Valley in the basin of Kazakh River, where during the melioration of the area, the owner of this territory found capstones of the burial. This burial, as now we know, that stone schist with gate, which is typical for especially Kura-Araxes 1 burial constructions, and consist so far more than 30 bodies, almost 60 pottery vessels, and around 100 pieces of bronze objects. Here I will just describe this settlement, show you the some field photos because we need a lot of time for the complete understanding of this barrier. But already 2 or 3 observations. First, that's the presence of the gate. For my Georgian colleagues, I can mention, and I don't Didube, Kiketi, Koda, Grmahevistav, and many sites like this where we have a gate, we have a tradition of the collective burials. Here, 30 bodies were collected under the, mostly under the far wall, and only the last bodies, last skeleton in the front of the gate, partly were in the anatomical connection. Unfortunately, the situation was, let's say, very complicated, but in any case, so it's one of the last and recent and interesting and rich objects of Kura-Araxes in Armenia. Couple of slides will illustrate the situation. Sometimes material were in situ, even we can say which part of the dress belongs this or personal ornament, beads, pins, etc. But most interesting, the pottery collection of this barrier. So 60 vessels, practically all be very homogenic collection and belongs to the Shresh-Mokhrabalur style of the pottery, which is typical just for Ararat Valley. But so far, it is the biggest, I can say, etalon collection of Shresh-Mokhrabalur pottery. Here, just some examples of the goblets. It's very typical and very well-known style of the ornaments. This kind of the vessels, plates, and metal objects. It's interesting that it's the first relatively big collection of metal objects for Shresh-Mokhrabalur, and here also, of course, we have a typical for Kura-Araxes, for the South Caucasus, for Near East and North Caucasus, kind of the metal, nothing very special here. Just some observation we can do later. This comparison with North Armenia, some differences we can see in terms of the more modes, you know, not the shape of the artifacts, but which material, which population prefer. And the final things, which is bring Xiaomian together with the slides which I showed you previously. The presence of the vessel belongs to the Kura-Araxes one. Believe me that we know well the typology of our pottery, and even the presence of one vessel, it's enough to say that it's absolutely other pottery tradition. So you can see that in in front of the gate, yeah, on the opposite part of the chamber, as a vessel which belongs to the LR Ararat style. So I think here we also has the same already observed situation when early construction tomb of Kura-Araxes I was used during the Kura-Araxes II. The same situation observed in Karnut, in Shaumian, but also in some other complexes on the same territory, on the valley of Kasah River, like in Araxes, where together with Kura-Araxes pottery, we have typical, like you can see in Shaumian burial goblet. In Araxes tomb excavated many years ago by Haruchun Martirosyan. And finally, relatively new finds from the tomb of Chkalovka in the basin of Sevan Lake, where we have also two different, typologically very different complexes of the Kura-Araxian pottery. Thank you. Thank you, dear colleagues, for your attention. Maybe I will not do the special conclusion for my talk. I think I show you what the problems we have so far during the investigation of Kura-Araxes. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ruben. I think now if you would like to, I mean, there's space and time for a summary in Armenian.
Yeah, right, okay. Բարի։ Այս դասախոսությունով, այս զեկուցումով ես փորձեցի ներկայացնել Kura-Araxyan հուշարձանների ուսումնասիրման վիճակ, արդի վիճակը Հայաստանում, ներկայացնելով վերջի տարիների մեր հիմնական արդյունքները և մատնանշելով այն խնդիրները, որոնցից մենք առնչվում ենք գրեթե յուրաքանչյուր հուշարձան բերելուց։ Առաջին ուզում եմ հիշեցնել, որ տվյալ պահին մեծ հայտնի է մոտ 220 Kura-Araxyan հուշարձան Հայաստանի տարածքում, որոնցից 180-ը քարտեզագրված է և մենք ունենք 165 ռադիոածածնային տարեցի, որոնց թիվը աճում է տարի առ տարի և այդ քանակը արդեն բավարար է ընդհանուր ընդհանրացումներ անելու համար։ Ես ելնում եմ այն հանգամանքին, որ Kura-Araxes-ը ուներ դիսկրետ բնույթ, բաժանվում է երկու հիմնական փուլերի, որոնցից առաջինը ներկայացնում է բավականին հոմոգեն համասեռ մի մշակույթ, իսկ երկրորդը արդեն ներկայացված է շատ հետերոգեն բնույթ ունի և ներկայացված է մի քանի լոկալ համաժամանակյա լոկալ խեցեղեն տիպերով։ Ինչպես տեսնում եք, ռադիոածածնային տարեթվերը, թե հները, թե նորը ցույց են տալիս դրանց համաժամանակյա լինելը։ Երկրորդ հանգամանքը դա կամ հանգամանքներից մեկը դա Kura-Araxyan հուշարձանների միաշերտ բնույթն է։ Հիմնականում մենք ունենք հիմնականում կամ վաղ փուլի միաշերտ բնակատեղիներ, հուշարձաններ կամ երկրորդ փուլի պատկանող ևս միաշերտ հուշարձան։ Համեմատաբար քիչ են այն բնակատեղիները, այն հուշարձանները, որտեղ Kura-Araxes-ը ներկայացված է թե վաղ, թե ուշ փուլերով։ Դրանցից մեկը Գեղարոտի բնակատեղին է, որտեղ Kura-Araxyan շերտերը միմյանցից բաժանված են ստերիլ ավազի շերտով, ռադիոածածնային տարեթվերը ցույց են տալիս, որ գործ ունեն երկու տարբեր բնակեցումների հետ, որոնց միջև մոտավորապես 40-50 տարվա խզում կա և երկու բնակատեղիների հատակագծերը չեն համընկնում միմյանց հետ, այսինքն երկրորդը առաջացել է առանց հաշվի առնելու նախորդ առկա հուշարձանի հատակագիծը։ Ավելին տեղի է ունենում հուշարձանի որոշ հատվածների ֆունկցիաների փոփոխություն, օրինակ մեզ անհայտ ֆունկցիայով այս հետարքի կառույցի մեջ մխրճում են դամբարաններ ուժ փուլում, կամ նմանատիպ կառույց ծածկվում է իր վերևի շերտում, ծածկվում է բնակելի կառույցով, փոխելով նախորդի նորից մեզ անհայտ, բայց բոլոր դեպքերում ոչ բնակելի բնույթը։ Մեկ այլ հուշարձանի օրինակի վրա Կառնուտի դեպքում ես ներկայացրեցի նույնպես այս խնդիրները կապված մեկ հուշարձանի տարածքում հատվածների տրանսֆորմացիայի, նպատակների փոփոխությանը, դամբարանների առաջացումը եւ բնակատեղիների լքման ձևերը, խոսքը Կառնուտի մասին է, որտեղ մի հատվածը ամբողջությամբ գործնականում դատարկ է, միայն մի քանի անոց in situ, այն դեպքում եւ բնակատեղի մի այլ հատվածը մի քանի 100 մետր հեռու շատ հարուստ է in situ պահպանված նյութերով, այդ թվում մանր գթածոներով։ Այստեղ էլ Կառնուտի դամբարանները ցույց են տալիս գտնված պեղավայրի տարածքում, ցույց են տալիս ինչպիսի փոփոխություններ են եղել բնակելի եւ ուրեմն թաղման հատվածների։ Եվ վերջապես այս տարի բացված արդեն բազմիցս տարբեր առիթներով շոշափված, բայց դեռ հուշարձան, որի պեղումները դեռ չեն ավարտվել եւ որի ամփոփ ուսումնասիրությունը դեռ արժևում է։ Խոսքը Շամյանի դամբարանի մասին է, որը առաջինն է իր տեսակի մեջ, քանի որ դա առաջի շրեժ-մոխրաբուրյան տիպի դամբարանն է Հայաստանի տարածքում։ Այս դամբարանի պեղումների ընթացքում հայտնաբերվեց մոտ 30 հանգուցյալի կմախ, ավելի քան 60 խեցանոթ եւ 100-ից ավել, փոքր ավել բրոնզե իր։ Այդքանը, շնորհակալություն ուշադրության համար։ That's all, Julian John.
Thank you so much, Ruben, for this very wide and informative lecture. Then I would like to we could pass to the question and answer session. Sabine, would you like to take over?
Sorry, I'm still letting people in. So Julia, maybe you can start the discussion. I'm still
okay. Let's start with the question and answer. I see Mitchell Rothman raised his hand. Mitchell, would you like to?
Yeah, just a couple of questions more than comments. At Carnot, I noticed those very large storage vessels. Do you have at the site many built storage pits, very large storage pits? Because I know at Shengavit, we don't have really that many large storage vessels, but we have, every time we put in another square, we've got another really big stone lined pit. So my first question is, do you have those at Carnot or know of them elsewhere?
We haven't pits on the territory of upper operation, on the territory of operation 1. We have 3-4 pits on the lower part of the settlement, on the abandoned part of the settlement. Some has absolutely same construction like in Shengavit. So couple of slabs cover the top of the pit and the big hole. But I can say something else about it, because pit was absolutely empty, was sterile even after flotation. Part for sure belongs to the main horizon, part can be intrusive late.
Okay, well, thank you. We actually got grain out of all of ours. So they're definitely using it at Chengovit. They're definitely using it for grain. The other question was about, I certainly agree with you about, these different sort of typological areas within Armenia and beyond. But there's also some repetitiveness. So like the bowl with the single handle on the one side is pretty common across like Shresh Mukharblur and in the Chengovit style. So, is it only certain vessels you think that are really typifying these distinct groups, or is it, in general, you think they're really completely separate and don't repeat themselves?
Mitchell, mostly when we are talking about the groups here, we mean the complexes, the sites, like Xiaomia, for example, which you can see 60 vessels. You can find one or two vessels or shares from one part in the other settlement. Especially, I think that's your case. Chengovit is a typical this case because it's on the contact territory between 2 or even 3 different subcultural areas, between Arad Valley, between Aragatzot and Kotay, which lower one, south one belongs to one style of the pottery, like Shresh Mukharblur, other. The question is the relation, the percentage for diagnostic. In case of, for example, Voskebelur, recently excavated settlement where we have the presence of the at least two different cultures, we have 80